Hi guys, welcome to another episode of That Gardener channel. Today we're going to be talking about one of our favorite vegetables, the eggplants. Eggplant is such a versatile vegetable that you can use for grilling, for making stews, stir fries. You can make dips from it. It's absolutely one of our favorites. It's actually the first season we have grown eggplants and they have done absolutely amazing this year round. So I'm sure we're going to definitely grow it for the second season. And for the first season, we just got our beautiful harvest. So I wanted to take you guys on our trip to get a bit of the harvest and talk a little bit about some of the tips that worked really well for us. So let's get going, guys. So this is our beautiful eggplants that we have growing here. We grow several different varieties here. The two particular varieties that we love growing is the Black Beauty, which is here. And you can see the difference in the shape with the two varieties. The other one that we grow is the Long Purple, and this is more of the Chinese eggplant, which is long and slender, while the Black Beauty is a bit more roundish, ovalish, and bigger in size. So one of the different things about eggplant, unlike some of the other vegetables, is that eggplants can be eaten from the beginning to the end. The size actually doesn't have much to do with the ripeness. So you can actually eat it when it's fairly young as well, and you can eat it when it's a little bit mature. You just don't want to wait for it to be too mature and let it stand on the plant too long, because that's when it gets really seedy and also like pithy and spongy and not really tasty at all. So it's actually better to really harvest the eggplants a little bit early rather than wait for it too long. So I wanted to show you guys a tip that we use to tell when the eggplant is ready for harvest. What you do is basically you take your finger and you gently press down on the eggplant, and if you see that the indentation is not left on the eggplant and it pushes back, then that means that the eggplant is ready to be harvested. It's not back, the skin is pushing back, and you don't see any of the indentations from the finger, so it means that it's ready to be harvested. As opposed to this one, which is fairly young eggplant, has been on the plant for only a few days. If we push into the eggplant, you can see the indentations are still there from the finger. Which means it's not yet ready. So one of the other important things to consider with eggplant is the fertilization, to make sure that the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the NPK values are all covered in the wholesome fertilizer, and making sure that it's a bit higher on the nitrogen side so that the plant can get a bit bigger and get more leafy and mature faster. And it could actually hold the fruits later in the life cycle. Once the eggplant is starting to mature and you can see some of the flowers are coming out and you can see the first fruits also developing, what you should do is actually you switch over to the fertilizer which is high in phosphorus. So what we tend to do is in the beginning we try to give it a lot of compost, you give it a lot of manure and a general NPK value cocktail that we use, as you guys know from my other video. And later in the life cycle, when it starts to have a little bit of that fruit, what we try to do is start to switch over more to the bone meal, which is excellent source of phosphorus, or we can also use rock phosphorus. So for the watering process, what we also tend to do is to make sure that we really treat it like any other plant. It doesn't require any special watering purposes like tomatoes or leafy greens, which require a little bit of more water. Eggplants are actually quite drought resistant, but you don't want to leave it without water for too long. So what happens is when you don't water the eggplant, it becomes quite bitter in taste actually, and that's because it's a defense mechanism which the eggplant uses to make sure that the animals, when they eat it, they don't really like it, and that way it can actually survive through a long drought season. So you do want to make sure that you try to water it at least around once a week and make sure that it's the plant is not drooping and it's not drying out. So eggplants, they love hot weather. They originated in India and China. They're used to that hot sunny weather. You need at least 5 to 7 hours of sun. If you get more, like 10 hours, that's even better. But don't try to grow it if you get less than 5 hours of sun, because it's not going to survive. And it really needs that long duration of sun and hot temperature to bore these fruits on them. Very similar to the tomatoes. Something else to really take note with the eggplants is that they love the hot temperature as well. So keep that in mind when you're trying to put the seeds into the ground. They love the hot temperature. The ground should be already quite warm. They love 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. They can survive even 50 degrees Celsius, but no less than 25, or the high 20s temperature, 20 degrees Celsius temperatures, to really do well. Something else to keep in mind in terms of the spacing, what you will see here, what we have done is we have really bunched them together quite a bit. They can survive really well even when they're quite close. As you can see, they're not very far apart. We just put around 4 to 5 inches between the eggplants, and that seems to work really well. You can bunch them out like this, and that's a really good use of space, and they do really well with companion planting as well. So we have put them right next to our ginger. We have the leafy greens on the other side, some lettuce, spinach, some tomatoes in the back, some of the lettuce on this side as well, and kangkung. So they do very well with companion planting, and with also bunching them together. They do really well, and it's a good use of space as well. In terms of pesticide, we don't really use any pesticides on them. You should avoid using pesticides. Eggplants are quite resistant to pests as long as you are growing them next to some of the herbs and also doing a little bit of that companion gardening. What I would recommend is, if you really do need to use any pest control mechanism, go for the organic method. We are go for the organic method, so try to use some of the combinations like the soap and water with oil, milk and water, use neem oil, so very natural methods like that rather than any chemicals, because they do tend to absorb any of those chemicals quite easily into the fruit. So we really try to avoid using any chemicals at all. So we're going to get rid of some of these leaves while we are going to harvest as well, and that's really to make sure that there is really good airflow around the plant, and also to make sure that with the rains that we're getting nowadays, there's less splashing and chance of diseases at some of these bottom leaves. So I think that's really it for today, guys. Just wanted to take you along for a small harvest for our eggplants for lunch, and just wanted to share some of the tips that have worked well with us for the first year of growing eggplants, and we're hoping to get much more harvest this year as well. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please do hit the like and subscribe button if you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks a lot for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.